Hello and welcome. With a death toll as high as 200 and thousands arrested, the largest waves of anti-government protests in Myanmar are over, at least for now. But the issues remain unresolved. The trigger for the violent upheaval came after the ruling military government obeyed the recommendations of the IMF and World Bank to lift fuel subsidies in August. As the price of petrol and diesel skyrocketed, students and activists took to the streets. By last month, the protests were led by thousands of Buddhist monks, and they continued peacefully for about a week. But then the military cracked down, and now dissident groups say up to 200 protesters were killed and 6,000 arrested. In contrast, the government reports a death toll of 13. Independent verification is, of course, impossible in such a tightly controlled nation. The United Nations deployed a special envoy to broker an end to the crackdown on the pro-democracy protesters, and he was able to meet twice with Aung San Suu Kyi, the detained Nobel Peace Prize winner. The UN diplomat Ibrahim Gambari also met with the government's leaders in an attempt to persuade them to take the people's demand for democracy seriously. Today, we'll discuss the latest developments in the democracy movement in Myanmar. Don't forget, we take your calls on the show, and you can reach us at the numbers on the bottom of your screen. Well, joining me from New York is Ashin Nayaka, a visiting scholar from Myanmar at the Department of History at Columbia University. He also founded the Buddhist Missionary Society in New York. And here in Washington, D.C., Maureen Angtwin, the director of the Burma project of the Open Society Institute, which is part of the Soros Foundation's network. We welcome both of you. And Dr. Ashin Nayaka, if I could start with you first, sir, just from the information you've had from Myanmar, as it's officially called, or Burma, as I know the majority of the democracy movement calls it, what is the current situation in the country right now?
I have to say current situation is very critical, yeah. So where several Buddhist monks were tortured and detained and arrested. Mostly they are located in the government technological institute in ancient Yangon, where some monks are forced to disrupt. So some are taken to undisclosed location. This is very critical in history of Burma. So this is what I have to say is this is the greatest tragedy in modern history of Burma. Military posts are torturing, killing, and destroying Buddhist monks' life monastery in Burma.
I want to bring in Maureen Angtwin here and put an email, start off with a question to you that came in by email actually from Sandy in British Columbia in Canada, who says, what is happening in Myanmar is tyranny. How can they kill their own people and expect to make progress as a nation? People, not policies, make a nation. And I wonder, if you could answer what the significance is of the Buddhist monks being so visible in this pro-democracy movement. What's made them come forward?
Well, I think Ashin Nayaka could probably answer that question better than I can. I think they've come forward because it's quite clear that they don't consider this present government legitimate, because they are the spiritual power that actually bestows legitimacy. And also, that any economic downturn, which has been disastrous for years, affects them because they depend on the people to support them, because they can't go and work. They give them merit, and the people give them back support.
Dr. Nayak, actually, if you could give us some perspective on what Buddhist monks represent to the average person in the country, what would you say they truly represent?
They are, Buddhist monks truly represent to the political and cultural life of Burma. There are, about 60,000 Buddhist monasteries across the country, around 400,000 Buddhist monks in Burma. So most of about 80%, 85%, I have to say about 85% monks are get involved in this demonstration.
Now, Dr. Nayaka, what does the sort of Buddhist monk bloc represent to the military rulers, the generals? Do they see them as a viable source to negotiate with, to talk to? How does the military junta regard the Buddhist monks?
Yeah, this is the best way to give our suggestion to the military government to negotiate with the Buddhist monk to get a solution in crisis space in Burma.
Okay, well, I want to get a question again that came in by email, and Maureen, I'll give this one to you again. This came from Arusha in Tanzania, and it's anonymous, and the person says, the Myanmar government should listen to the international community and stop its acts. The international community should put more pressure on the government. Where are the peace and human rights defenders of the world, the superpowers? To what extent do you think that this has been given enough international, not just attention, but actually international concern and action?
I think compared to 1988 uprising, when there was no internet there, remember the internet revolution has made a huge difference because they cannot do things in isolation without people outside seeing right away in real time the abuses that are going on. The international community can play a big role, but what they've got to do is to pressure the great powers that are helping support this, the junta, which is India, China, and Russia, which are hard to do.
And of course, the UN sent an envoy, Ibrahim Gambari, and he's met.
Well,
he got to meet with Aung San Suu Kyi, though, and
but he's done that before many times, and he's always come back empty-handed. And you see how the senior General Than Shwe treated him, sort of like the Mao treated Nixon, you know. And when he went to China, he made him wait 2 days before he saw him. Made him go to some little seminar upstate somewhere in Shan State just to cool his heels, and then he saw him. And I'm sure he didn't promise anything. So Gambari, again, going to be empty-handed. So I think it's got to be more than that.
We've got a call on the line from London. Let's get Shida in. Shida, what would you like to ask?
My question is to gentleman and the lady that they just started protest now, and as far as I know, the army is ruling the Burma from quite a long time. I want to ask to these gentlemen and this lady that would they protest? Will be continue until the army leader leave the job, leave the ruling party, or would they just want some deal between the leaders?
Let's find out. Let's find out from Dr. Ashin Nayaka then. What would be the ideal compromise, sir?
Well, we are firmly determined to continue our legitimate struggle against dictatorship rule. You see now thousands of monks are, detained and several monasteries were raided. So far as I know, there are 2,400 monks are now arrested. So this is the greatest, as I told earlier, this is the greatest tragedy in modern history of Burma. So international community must take, serious action to stop this, bloody crackdown in Burma. Otherwise, the civil war, are most likely to continue.
Well, let's get Alan on the line from France, and Alan has a question. Alan, what would you like to ask?
Yes, I would like to know if, like in the case of Milosevic, General Pinochet, or even Saddam Hussein, there is any legal possibility of having the generals accused of crimes against humanity.
Maureen Antwin, let me ask you about that perspective, that getting the international community to take action against the ruling military junta, could they have any grounds, according to the kind of question that we've had here from France, from Alan?
Well, they have to go to treaties that the UN, that the Burmese have ratified, say, and if you can enforce that they are not following, say, a UN treaty, then they can take them to some court or case. That they've been accused of massive rapes of the ethnic groups in the Shan, Karen state and the Mon state. They're doing many illegal things, but as far as taking them to the court of law, it's going to take a pretty good package of people who can take them, legitimately. It's very hard to take a government to the court.
From your perspective, Maureen, how assertive has General Than Shwe been, the sort of the leading figure in this, really?
How assertive?
Yeah.
Well, he hardly talks, he's hardly seen, but we all know that he is the one person making most of the big decisions. So he's assertive in that there's conspiracy theories that he may have been brought about, provoked the riots and the march and the demonstrations in order to smoke out dissidents.
And yet there's talk about divisions within the military as well, among some of the senior leaders.
Yes. Thank goodness there's finally talk about divisions among the senior military leaders, and let's hope some of that is true, because that's actually going to be the only way that this military is very strong, may reconcile with their own people and with the democratic forces. If it's got to be someone else besides Senior General Than Shwe.
Well, let's listen to what actually the representative from the country, from Myanmar, the Foreign Minister Nyan Win, had to say when he denounced foreign interference, speaking before the UN General Assembly. He complained about foreign interference for the violence. This is what he had to say.
The situation would not have deteriorated had the initial protest of the small group of activists against the rise in fuel price had not been exploited by political opportunists. They sought to turn the situation into a political showdown, aided and abetted by some powerful countries. They also took advantage of protests staged initially by a small group of Buddhist clergy demanding apology for maltreatment of fellow monks by local authorities. The security personnel exercised utmost restraint and they did not intervene for nearly a month. However, when the mob became unruly and provocative, they were compelled to declare a curfew. In this regard, the international community can best help Myanmar by showing greater understanding. They can begin by refraining from measures which would result in adding fuel to the fire.
That's the official perspective from the Foreign Minister of Myanmar, or Burma as the pro-democracy demonstrators still call it. I want to bring in Dr. Ashin Nayaka from New York here and put an email to you, sir, that came in from Orlando in the United States. The caller, the email writer doesn't give a name, it's anonymous, but it says, I do not support the Myanmar government in any way, but I see from their perspective that they are doing what they can do for the sake of stability. The petrol prices were raised and the people went to protest. The government does not want the economy to be hurt any further, so it takes action against the protesters who are damaging the economy. There should be no intervention from any country. Let me ask you, do you feel that this is a situation the people of the country can handle for themselves, or do you really advocate a strong international action to change the situation there?
Well, what our prime concern is to change the whole system of the military rule in Burma. This is what Buddhist monks are constantly demanding, to change the whole system, to come from the government and negotiable. Otherwise, the problem are most likely to continue.
I want to get an email that we had into to Maureen Aung Swin here from Chris in Stockholm. And Chris wrote in from Sweden saying, the problem is that if the international community steps in with the peacekeeping forces, it's going to be seen as a bush plot. Let the Asian communities deal with it. Who are the Asian communities who could have some serious influence? China obviously is a major trading partner.
I don't think you have to worry about any bush plot or any international peacekeepers going in right now. That's a little bit premature. But we would definitely like to have the Asian ASEAN, Japan, by the way, who's had a journalist was killed in cold blood, and who also gives the most the aggregate figure of foreign aid to Burma, to play a bigger role, come out more publicly, and to press, use their leverage with this government. On the other email, if I make a comment about who's causing the economic downturn, the military regime right now is quite flush with money from oil and gas profits that they've got from 3 or 4 oil contracts that they've given to foreign exploiters. So it's not like they don't have the money, and the mismanagement is actually their priorities. They decide to, build that capital instead of using it for health and education for the people.
Okay. Let's get a caller in. We've got on the line Suresh from London. Suresh, what would you like to ask?
I am an Indian, and I'm calling from UK. I'm ashamed to be an Indian of Indian origin. Sorry, I'm having an argument with my wife. I'm ashamed of being an Indian, and because I haven't heard anything whatsoever from Indian government. Right. The current UPA government seems to be ethically and morally corrupt, and they should be making some sort of sensible statement, much better than the Chinese do, because India is a country with high ethical and moral
Suresh, as we're almost out of time, let me get a response from Dr. Nayaka on this, on what role India could have played, please, sir.
Well, this is what question I feel about Indian government. Indian government should take leadership role in this, struggle in Burma. We, especially Buddhist monks, feel India is, a sweet memory in our heart, because our religion, especially Buddhism, belong to India. Right. So ignoring this, our black Burmese people, India government's principle of democracy should be questioned.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Nayaka. And Maureen, we're pretty much out of time, but I want to know.
Well, India, I'm appalled. I grew up. I grew up in India. I went to school in South India. This is the world's largest democracy. This is where Aung San Suu Kyi went to school. This is where in 1988 they immediately, they supported the democracy movement. Here they flipped just because for trade reasons.
Well, of course, the story is going to be ongoing, and I'm so sorry we run out of time, but Dr. Nayaka and Maureen, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll continue this debate soon, I hope. Thank you. And thank you for being with us. On the next show, look at the current state in Morocco and how it fits into the politics of the greater Arab region with Prince Hisham bin Abdullah Al Alawi. Don't forget, emails to riz@aljazeera.net. We'll see you next time. Street Talk is next.